picking apart a millennial's argument for politically correct newspeak. Okay, folks, I started reading this article by Inc.com and I just stopped at the second paragraph because, well, I try to understand the mind of people who I think I disagree with, well, to make sure that I disagree with them, and to maybe change their minds. Sometimes they convince me of their ways, and I adjust my own thinking. At any rate, if you don't try to understand the minds of people that you think you oppose, then you're just disingenuous. So, I do try to educate myself on their views. But sometimes, I run across something like this article where it's not so much educational for me as it is entertainment. But this video isn't just about entertainment. It's actually an opportunity to have a certain conversation. And though I may be harsh with millennials in this video, don't worry, at the end I get harsh with myself and everyone else. So don't feel like you're being persecuted, millennials. Don't worry, I do the same to myself and other non-millennials. Just hold on to your seats, okay? Title of the article is 5 Things Millennials Want Everyone to Know About Political Correctness That Older Generations Don't Understand. Being PC isn't about restricting free speech, it's about creating space for meaningful conversations. By Matthew Jones, contributor, Inc.com. Quick comment on the title. This is a little bit like a child who has chocolate all over their mouth and is trying to convince older people that they did not eat the cake.
Did you eat cake?
In other words, this smacks to me of something like, the reason why I did not eat the chocolate cake and why the older generations don't believe me. And stating that while having chocolate cake all over your face. What I mean here is that the author is suffering from what is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. In other words, he's not smart enough to realize how stupid he is. Example, the subtitle of this article begins, Being PC isn't about restricting free speech.
Slow down.
Let's stop right there. Okay. Now, for you, free speech is not the primary concern. It's actually an obstacle that gets in the way of what you want, what you're most concerned about here, which is to control people's language and to control the conversation to make sure that you get your way. Perhaps you should be more honest and more accurate and say that for you, it's not about restricting free speech. But you damn well know it is for other people. And don't be so selfish, other people matter just as much as you do. The heated debate about political correctness is often misunderstood. While many individuals across generations dislike the pejorative use of political correctness to represent censorship, well, too bad, because it does literally represent censorship and other things. A closer investigation reveals generational differences in the desire to use inclusive language. Millennials know that using appropriate language invites rather than restricts productive conversation. Creating a supportive environment makes space for all individuals to feel welcome in sharing their opinions rather than fearing that people will demonize their personhood and attack their character based on their identities. Okay, stop right there. First of all, what you millennials need to understand is that you are not your skin color. You are not your political beliefs. You are not your sexual orientation. You are not your sex, and so on. You are an individual. Your lack of individuality is what makes you think that if somebody says that they don't agree with X, that means they invalidate your existence. There is no rational basis to believe that your identity is simply these surface things. If you think these surface differences make up your entire being, you're shallow. You live on the surface. You're not deep. You're not an individual. Back to the article. Thanks to the internet, millennials are citizens of the globe and ambassadors of social justice. Unfortunately, not all generations understand how using certain words or phrases prohibits dialogue and hurts other people. No. Okay. If it prohibits dialogue, it's because of your refusal to have any conversation that is not on your terms. You selfish, narcissistic, irrational idiot. To discover 5 things that all millennials want older generations to know about political correctness that they don't understand, read the list below. 1. There is a major difference between being honest and spewing prejudice. Now, right off the bat, I would have to agree with that, although spewing prejudice is being honest, but there's a difference between being honest and saying something reasonable and being honest and spewing prejudice. If you're spewing prejudice, you're being honest about your prejudice, but you're not being reasonable. You have the right to share your opinion, but you don't have the right to make people feel threatened. Okay, stop.
That's not entirely accurate.
What? Which part?
Okay, what you consider to be threatening is irrational and unreasonable. It's so irrational and unreasonable that if you think other people should conform to your conception of what is threatening, you are being offensive and, well, you're threatening what is common decency. Using emotionally charged words that make others feel frightened for their mental, physical, and emotional well-being, even if it does not impact you in some way, is morally wrong. You don't get to be so weak and so sensitive and then demand that everybody else respect your extraordinarily weak and defensive ways. No, that's selfish. You don't get to do that. That's your own fault. You don't make it the responsibility of other people to deal with your faults. You fix your own faults. Prejudice means possessing strong, unfavorable opinions about a person based on their demographics and their cultural affiliations. While we all have varying degrees of prejudice, using yours to purposefully harm others or refusing to stop saying words that others find hurtful is bullying. Okay, now, this goes back to the whole political correctness that was trotted out in the 80s. They took words that were not offensive to anyone, like, say, black, and they attempted to make them offensive. In other words, you can't use the word black anymore, you have to use the term African American. Now, I'm old enough to remember when this was trotted out, people, black people, white people, whatever, looked at that and said, what's wrong with the word black? We don't mean anything offensive by it. But see, that's part of their agenda. Ever since they started trotting out political correctness, they keep changing terms as an excuse to say, oh, you're not using Newspeak? That's a 1984 reference, look that one up. You're not using the new term? Well, you must be racist or sexist or whatever. No, that's bullshit, and once again, that's your own fault, not anyone else's. Just as you want a teacher to intervene to protect your child from a bully, it's okay for others to give you the opportunity to correct your behavior when your words are offensive.
What you talking about?
No, fuck you. You're just trying to manipulate people. So go fuck yourself. 2. Political correctness is not about censorship. It's about showing respect. No, once again, take the term black for example. When people use the term black, it's not out of disrespect. But these people, political correct people, want to make it so that they control the conversation. No, go fuck yourself. Censorship is a coercive attempt to hide something from people. Asking people to use more inclusive language is not silencing their voice, it's inviting them to use a language in a way that promotes conversation. Inviting, huh? Okay, now, if you demand under penalty of law, or say under penalty of having your head bashed in, or losing your job, etc., if you demand that people use your terms, or else they'll be punished, that is not an invitation. My goodness, these people, they just use words how they want to. I mean, fuck the English language, it's whatever we want it to mean, and if you disagree, you're a Nazi. The purpose of political correctness is to treat all people with the love and respect they deserve. Perhaps you could say it's to force all people to respect and love other people. And forcing people to do that never works, it always makes things worse. This means calling people by the pronouns they use and avoiding words and phrases that stereotype and demonize entire groups of people. Again, it only does so because you try to manipulate the language so that you have something against your ideological enemies. No, it's bullshit. And it's very obvious. The fact that you don't see that means that you're stupid. You idiots don't have enough intelligence to realize how obvious it is that you're disingenuous. You're intellectually dishonest. You're doing this to manipulate people, and you know it. You just don't know that other people know it. But we do. You're stupid.
You're an idiot!
You can still possess whatever ideology you follow. Bullshit.
Bullshit!
Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit.
No, you can't. We all know that if you don't conform to their ideology, they will do whatever they can to get you fired, disbarred, deplatformed, hit over the head, etc. So you're lying, and again, it's very obvious. You can still possess whatever ideology you follow, and you can still share your opinion. You're just being asked to do so in a way that is not hurtful to others. Yeah, this is code for you can believe whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, as long as it's what we want you to. 3. Millennials feel more connected to global citizenship and human rights than nationalism. Okay, so again, they're probably using the word nationalism in their own idiosyncratic way. To normal people, being a nationalist means that you love your country. To these people, being a nationalist means you're a white supremacist. Not only do millennials have conversations with people around the world, they are also seeing inhumane acts of violence against marginalized people live streamed on social media. Okay, now wait a minute. If you're that connected to other people around the world, can you possibly pretend that you are ignorant of the fact that Islam and Islamic cultures are extremely oppressive to, say, gay people, women, apostates, atheists, etc.? No, you do know that, you fucking liars. You fucking know that because you are glued to the internet. You fucking know it. You complain about the slightest little perceived inequalities in the most equitable culture on earth, while ignoring rampant sexism and anti-gay violence in the cultures of people that you want to defend simply because they're not white and Western. It's very obvious. Anyway, back to the article. This increased visibility and exposure leads to a desire to ensure equality for all individuals regardless of their race, gender, sexuality, socioeconomic status, or religion. Yeah, except for the millions of people outside the West that still practice anti-gay violence, violence against women, violence against apostates and atheists, etc. You all fucking know that this goes on, and you're pretending to not know. It's not credible. We know that you know. And your silence about this means that you condone it and you support it. Nationalism, oh great, now they're going to define nationalism, and I'm sure they're going to get it wrong. Nationalism, or the belief that your country and its laws, culture, and government is superior and beyond critique, is not appealing to millennials. Notice, by the way, they just defined ethnocentrism, not nationalism. But whatever suits their agenda. Seeing first-hand pictures and videos on their smartphones of discrimination and unequal rights for people of color, Muslims, immigrants, women, and LGBTQ individuals has increased millennials' desire for social justice. Okay, now, once again, we do not believe that you only see discrimination against Muslims. We know that you know that Muslims discriminate against women, gay people, apostates, atheists, etc. So you're basically just flat out lying. You, the author, and anyone who believes this shit that the author is spewing. We don't respect you because you don't care about oppression in other countries if it doesn't suit your agenda. Okay? So we know that you're being dishonest. By being dishonest, you are disrespecting us. So fuck you. Number 4, inclusive language creates space for meaningful conversations to take place. Offensive language makes people feel unsafe. Okay, again, this whole thing of language makes you feel unsafe, okay? Either you think that because you are pathetic and weak, and if you are, nobody should be stooping to your level. Nobody should be enabling your sickness. Or you are just being dishonest and claiming that language makes you feel unsafe so that you can, once again, control what people think, say, and feel. Okay, so fuck you. If you were trying to have a difficult conversation with someone and they opened the discussion with words that were aimed at hurting your feelings, making you feel unsafe, or undermining your personhood, would you want to keep talking? Actually, yes, that would make me want to convince them of the error of their ways, because I'm not as pathetic and weak and ineffectual as you are. No, they write. Actually, yes. No, and that's why everyone should use more inclusive language. Or we'll hit you over the head with a bike lock. When you create space for other people instead of shutting them out, it creates opportunities for honest dialogue to emerge. Okay, now how about this? When you create a social environment in which people can't speak their own thoughts in the way that they think them, when you create a social environment where people are not allowed to be intellectually honest, or have a diversity of opinions, or to disagree with you, you are shutting them out. You are silencing. You are censoring. You are invalidating someone's existence. You're not being asked to silence yourself, you're being asked to use different words and phrases to express your thoughts. Yeah, and as anyone who studied these things knows, if you control the language, you control the thoughts. If you change the language, you change the thoughts. That's why people who think in one language think differently than people who think in a different language. People who only use political correct language tend to think only in political correct thoughts. That is thought control. Now, yes, there are exceptions to the rule. There are always going to be certain individuals who will work their way around the language and think for themselves despite the limitations set upon them by that language. However, such individuals are exceptional. Most people will be, well, kind of like this author and just drink the Kool-Aid. That subtle difference is not a big deal. You do it all the time. You don't speak the same way to your partner as you do with your grandmother or your newborn infant. Yes, this is true. By their own free will, adjusting their language so as to better be understood by different kinds of people who use different kinds of language, or have different conceptions of what is acceptable language. Doing something like that out of your own free will, because you want to, because it serves everyone involved, is not the same thing as making everyone speak the same way, whether they want to or not. It's not the same thing, you moron!
My God, what's wrong with you people?
Adjusting your dialogue isn't a momentous task, and doing so might allow you to have more meaningful conversations with people of all walks of life. Actually, no. Outside of your little left-wing, college-based bubble, most people would just scratch their heads and wonder what the hell you're talking about if you use the language that you think everyone else should be using. Do you understand? Of course, no, he doesn't understand. By the way, folks, I'm going to be sending this video to this author, and I'm going to invite him to give a response. I'll let you know if he responds. Number 5. Millennials are not being sensitive. Millennials are not being sensitive. They're being They're being morally minded. Hell yes, they are. And ethically informed global citizens. Yes, you're like religious Puritans. Okay? You're like fucking fundamentalists. You have a quasi-religion. Sure, it's not based in, like, faith in God's heaven or hell, but it's based on faith nonetheless. You're basically a cult. So yes, we know you're being morally minded. It's just that your morals suck. And again, you're not ethically informed global citizens because you ignore large areas of culture, of real activity going on in the world, where women, gay people, and other marginalized groups, say members of smaller religions or religious branches, for example, or people with no religion, or people who change their religion, people who are gay, people who are trans, people who are women. And also, no, you are not ethically informed global citizens because you ignore large areas of human activity in large areas of the globe where members of marginalized groups, to use your language, are being oppressed daily. And you ignore that simply because, well, if right-wing people are against their religion and I'm against right-wing people, then that means I must be for those religions and cultures. Therefore, those religions and cultures should not be criticized, because then you're validating the right wing. So, I'm going to ignore when they kill women. I'm going to ignore when they try to tell women how to dress. Well, I'm going to ignore the systematic, institutionalized oppression of women and other members of marginalized groups in their cultures because I don't like the right wing. And I'm more important than those oppressed people. It's about what I want. We all have to be together and hate what I want them to hate. My feelings are too important to validate the fact that these members of these marginalized groups are being oppressed in these countries. I'm a millennial, and I'm not selfish. I'm an ethically informed global citizen. Yeah, so maybe you're not being sensitive as much as you're being fucking selfish, morally minded, and unethical, ignorant, wannabe global citizens. Alright, back to the article. Many individuals in older generations think that millennials are overly sensitive. That's because you are. but it may be the other way around. If millennials are simply asking older generations to be respectful of others by using more inclusive language, the older generations respond with hostility. Yeah, because you don't get to control other people. Okay? And our refusal to bend over backwards to your demands, like tantrum-throwing toddlers, may be viewed as hostility or invalidation of your personhood by you, but that's because you don't know your ass from your elbow. You are not objective, you are selfish, and your view of everything is distorted through your lens of both selfishness and your lack of selfhood, by which I mean you are not individuals. You identify with things that are literally on the surface, like, say, your skin color or your genitals, rather than identifying as yourself, that which makes you, you. That of which there is no witcher, as far as your point of view is concerned. The fact that you are an individual and that you have to perceive the world through your own lens because you are yourself should not lead to the sort of selfishness that you display. It should lead to your development of your own individual character, your own unique self. But yet you are obsessed with identifying with that which is not really you, that which is not essentially you. Your sex, your orientation, your skin color, etc. Develop your own selfhood. Alright, back to the article. If millennials are simply asking older generations to be respectful of others by using more inclusive language and the older generation responds with hostility, a common response to feeling threatened, perhaps older generations are dealing with an underlying fear of being unable to adapt to a changing world. Maybe some of them, but I would say no. I would say this is really just you complaining about your own lack of ability to change others. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to actually improve society and individuals. There's nothing wrong with, for example, trying to convince your racist uncle why racism is wrong. There's nothing wrong with trying to improve those things. It's the way that you go about it. And actually, some of it is your own goals. Your goals themselves are wrong. So it's not just the way that you arrive at these goals. I mean, if your goal is to make a person who is racist see the error of their ways and to stop being racist, that's a good goal. If your goal is to, say, have 50% parity between men and women in every field, that's not a good goal. Because it's not up to you to decide that, for example, if women don't want to go into a certain field, that they must go into a certain field. That's not up to you. Men and women do have differences, and no, despite your own quasi-religious beliefs, it is neither untrue, nor unethical, nor is it hateful to point out the fact that some jobs have more women in it because more women are interested in that. Other jobs have more men in it because more men are interested in that job. And if your goal is to have 50% men, 50% women in everything, your goal is bad. It's socially corrosive, it's selfish, it's totalitarian. Alright, millennials, improve yourselves. I know that 40% of you are against freedom of speech. See my video about this, see the link below. That is entirely too high. Fuck your desire to control other people. Alright? To hell with your animosity towards individual liberties. To hell with your hatred. Back to the article. Making mistakes is part of learning. People occasionally say things that hurt other people's feelings, but the mature individuals are the ones that apologize and then adjust. By which you mean conform. Continuing to use hurtful language only prevents meaningful and necessary conversations. Actually, no. Your demands that everybody use your language does a lot more to prevent meaningful and necessary conversations. Now, perhaps this is true in the following way. Perhaps it is your refusal to have the conversation in any terms other than your own, and your perception that what other people say is hurtful language does a lot more to prevent meaningful and necessary conversations than what other people actually say. So here's my advice to anyone who agrees with this author. Learn what theory of mind is, or watch my next video, which will be about this. Simply, learn that other people have their own spheres of knowledge, their own beliefs, their own ways of seeing things, which are not yours. What is obviously hateful or hurtful to you is not necessarily so to other people. And that is not because they are objectively wrong. It is because you are being subjective, and you are mistaking your own subjective thoughts and feelings with objectivity. I am tempted here to give an entire lecture of advice for people who are, say, millennials and agree with this author. but I'm sure you'll agree that this video is long enough as it is, so I'll keep it short and simple. To use academic language, actualize your selfhood. To use common language, grow up. My critique of this article would not be necessary, and in fact this article would not have been written as such if everyone involved utilized critical thinking skills. Now don't worry, that's just an academic term. It just means logic, reason, objectivity, to be effective in the world. Now, related to critical thinking is the ability to admit to yourself, and hopefully to others, when you are wrong about something. When you discover that you've been mistaken about something, the wise thing to do would be to adjust yourself to that objective reality. Many people try to force the world to bend to their own mistaken views of it, even after they discover they are mistaken. They persist in their madness. And unlike the saying, if you persist in that kind of madness, you will never arrive at wisdom. Sorry, William Blake, you are an artistic genius, you are a poetic genius, but you weren't the most critical of thinkers. Now, to say a fool, if he persists in his madness, will arrive at wisdom is, it's poetic, it's nice. It may even be true, poetically speaking, or spiritually speaking, or something like that. It's certainly not objectively true. And get this, folks, this author, Matthew Jones, is a, quote, life coach and licensed therapist, unquote. Oh my goodness. If that doesn't make you shudder, you really need to start reflecting upon things. His work's been published by the Huffington Post. Well, that's not really a shocker there now, is it? Oh, goodness. Now, I think it's prudent here to have some self-reflection, of course. If you aren't looking for faults within yourself and admitting your own wrongdoings, then you're not a critical thinker. We have to admit to everybody, including the millennials, that a lot of this is not really their fault. They were raised to be this way. Not intentionally, but to a certain percent, they are the product of their upbringing. As I said, I don't want to make this video too long, so I don't want to elaborate on this, but I refer you to the works of Professor Jonathan Haidt, Professor Peter Boghossian, and others and what they have to say about this. For example, I urge you to read The Coddling of the American Mind in the Atlantic by Jonathan Haidt. My point here is that we can't lay all the blame on millennials. Yes, if you are an adult, you are responsible for yourself. However, it is not wise and it doesn't help anybody to ignore causal factors in this. And one causal factor is their upbringing. They were raised differently than other generations. So it's not unreasonable to suspect that that difference in their upbringing has a lot to do with their atrocious behavior out in the world. Again, I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm not going to elaborate on this, but I do think that this is an important point. It's very valid. It's not entirely their fault. And I think that if we don't admit this, then we're not being fair, we're not being critical thinkers, we're not being logical, reasonable, or rational. For you millennials that are still listening at this point, know this. Yes, I'm rough with you, but I'm being rough with everyone. Myself included, my generation included, other generations included. One more thing, Generation Z, I can't wait until you start crumbling the totalitarian, political correct SJW millennial mindset. The social justice warrior media monopoly upon points of views and reporting of facts. Folks, I am considering changing my name and my channel name from Just an Anti-Theist to something else. People have trouble saying, spelling, and understanding Just an Anti-Theist. I may change it to Just Incognito. Just Incognito. Tell me what you think. So, after making well over 100 videos, most of which I've spent days on, and over 500,000 views, over a few years I've made not much more than $100, which I would imagine breaks down to a few cents or maybe even a fraction of a cent per hour. So, I finally signed up for Patreon. There's a link to it right here on my channel banner and in the description below of this video and every other future video. Please consider donating something so that we can continue doing what we do, because at this rate we can't keep it up for long without your donations. Also, if you'd like me to thank you by name for donating, please let me know and I will do so. YouTube is problematic and they would rather not have YouTubers like myself criticizing the left-wing sector of the establishment of which they are a part. You see, I'm always being warned by YouTube, demonetized for not having content that's deemed to be advertiser friendly. I've had videos taken off YouTube for inappropriate content, and that inappropriate content content is always criticism of the far left. And I'm always afraid of my channel being shut down suddenly without warning, so I made a backup channel called Just Infidel. You know, Just Infidel. See the link below for that. Please subscribe to it. This will be the backup channel, and also I'll be uploading older videos to that channel that you may want to see for the first or perhaps the second time. So scroll down, click the links for that, subscribe to me also on vid.me, which is like YouTube but without the bullshit. Let's not let YouTube be a monopoly. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll be notified when I upload new videos to YouTube. Also scroll down, click the link, subscribe to me on minds.com, which is like YouTube and Facebook but without the censorship or the clutter and advertisements of the latter. Also, there's Gab.ai, another social media platform, the one with the frog. Delay. Also, please make sure you are subscribed to me on YouTube. If you think you've already subscribed and click that little bell icon, you may want to check again, especially if you haven't seen a video from me in a few days. People are being mysteriously unsubscribed from channels, some big YouTube glitch, who knows. But many YouTubers are complaining about this, so please go through your subscriptions and make sure you actually are subscribed to your channels. If you haven't seen a video from your favorite YouTube in a while, it may be because you've been unsubscribed due to some glitch or something. Finally, lately on YouTube, a great number of comments are getting lost. For many comments, we don't even get a notification. When we do get a notification, sometimes we can't actually respond to the comment. So I'm not ignoring your comment, there's just problems with the system. Okay folks, thanks for watching. Peace, love, freedom, and equality.